Hello Year 8. This lesson is what we call a retrieval practice lesson. You would normally have your test on Og, the oxygen molecule, at the start of this term. However, because we're not back just yet, we are delaying it a little bit, and our next booklet that we're going to be starting is called Forces, Waves and Electricity, and the booklets will hopefully be coming out to you shortly. So this lesson is to recap some work on the structure and function of the blood. So here we can see, I hope nobody's feeling a little bit okay, we've got a little drop of blood on the end of somebody's finger. And just some facts, a single drop of blood contains approximately 5 million red blood cells, between 5,000 to 10,000 white blood cells, and between 200,000 to 300,000 platelets. These are the main components, what makes up the blood, but all of these things, these cells and fragments of cells, have to float in something, and that liquid is called plasma. And the plasma, the liquid part of your blood, is actually a kind of pale yellowish colour. So, I want to know what you already know today. Pause the video and get yourself a pen and a piece of paper. All of this work will be done on paper, and then we will put it inside your Og, the oxygen molecule books. So it's good revision, ready for that test when you do eventually come back to school. So write blood in the middle, and I want you to write down what you already know about blood. Any facts at all that you might know about blood types, about blood donation, blood diseases, blood disorders, the components of blood, which we've already mentioned, the job, the function of blood, okay, how much blood you have in your body, anything at all that you know. And then I want you to write down one thing that you would like to know, something that perhaps you don't know already about blood, but something that you're interested in that you'd like to know about blood. So pause the video at this point and write this down. So, just some facts, some wowzer facts, okay? Blood in some animals is not always red. Sometimes the blood in some animals is blue due to a chemical called copper. We actually have a chemical called iron in our blood, and that makes up another chemical called hemoglobin. And it's the hemoglobin molecule that makes our blood the colour it is, red. Some organisms don't seem to have any blood at all, for example jellyfish. This is because the substances that they need to get in and out of their bodies can pass in by diffusion, so they don't need to have blood to transport materials around. So just a couple of questions, see if you can guess what these are. How much blood is donated per year? Do you think it's 1 million units, 500,000 units, or 2 million units? How much blood does an adult human have? 4 pints, 6 pints, or 9 pints? How many people donate blood in the population? 20% of the population, 10%, or 5%? And how many people will need a blood transfusion perhaps in their lifetime? 10%, 25%, or 35%? So write down your answers for those 4 questions, pause the video, and we'll go over these in a second. So the answers. How much blood is donated per year? It is 2 million units is donated per year. How much blood does an adult human have? It is 9 pints of blood. So if you've got a pint bottle or a pint carton in your fridge of milk, okay, it's 9 of those pints. How many people donate blood? Sadly, it's the lowest. Only 5% of people donate blood in their lifetime to others. How many people will need a blood transfusion in their lifetime? It is 25%. A quarter of the population will need some kind of blood transfusion for some reason or another at some point in their lifetime. So that's our little starter activity. So how is your blood used if you donate your blood, okay? Well, when they take a blood sample from people who donate it, first of all, you have to be 18. It used to be the case that you had to carry a donor card. You don't have to now. As long as you're fit and healthy, they can take blood from fit and healthy people. They just need to carry out a few tests beforehand. They don't always keep the blood as a whole. Sometimes they separate it up into its separate components. So sometimes they will spin it really fast in something called a centrifuge. And what this does is the heavier cells will sink to the bottom, and then they can collect the plasma on the top, the liquid part, which is used in burns. They can collect the white blood cells and the red blood cells and the platelets. So we've got the highest percentage of blood that is collected for donation is actually used for people with cancer and blood diseases. 34% of the donated blood goes to those people. Then 19% of people with other causes of anemia, followed by 18% is used in surgical patients like open heart surgery and in burns. So that's where I said they sometimes use the blood plasma to treat burns. 13% of it is used for people with other medical problems, including the heart, stomach and kidney disease. 10% is used in orthopedic patients, including fractures and joint replacements. 4% in pregnant women, new mothers and young children. And 2% in trauma victims, including road accidents. Okay. So we're going to do a little numeracy task to start us off. And this is called blood statistics. And I want to know if you know how to work out what we call significant figures. So I'm assuming that you've done significant figures in maths previously. So the significant figures is the number of figures that from a large number or sometimes a small number, okay, that we will use to show an approximation. So in one drop of blood, this is a really good example to use. There are obviously quite a number of different parts, different components. So the first thing I would like you to do is to draw out this table on your piece of paper. So put a heading, blood statistics, put in one drop of blood, and you can draw the little blood droplet if you want. Draw out the table with the headings for me, and I'm going to give you some information and ask you to see if you can figure out what the number is to 3 significant figures for platelets, 1 for red blood cells, and 4 for white blood cells. Pause the video to give you a chance to draw out the table. So, some blood statistics then. In one drop of blood, there are 28,654 platelets. Can you write this number to 3 significant figures? Remember that if a number before is 5 or above, that will alter the number in front of it, okay? So can you write this number to 3 significant figures? Write this number in the first column of your table. Oh, sorry, apologies. So this number in the first column of your table. Then it'll say for 3 significant figures, and write that number to 3 significant figures. There are 5,176,928 red blood cells. Can you write this number to 1 significant figure, please? Can you write this number to 1 significant figure? So again, put this in the first column, this number here. It'll say in the second column, significant figure 1, and write this number to 1 significant figure. There are 15,294 white blood cells. Can you write this number to 4 significant figures? So write this number in the first column. It says 4 significant figures in the second column. So can you put that number in 4 significant figures? And we can see there are actually lots of different types of white blood cells, and they have quite fancy names here. There's white blood cells called lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, basophils, neutrophils. They will have different roles in your body. The second task is to do with blood is carried in vessels called veins and arteries around the body, to do again with significant figures. And then once I've gone over this, we'll go back and fill in the table. So we have got 2 blood vessels here. There are actually 3 blood vessels totally. We're just going to concentrate on the 2. We've got arteries, veins, and right between them, connecting them up, are capillaries. Capillaries are the tiniest little blood vessels that you sometimes see on your skin as little red thread-like structures. Arteries have very, very thick walls, you can see here, and quite what we call a narrow lumen. The lumen is the hole through which the blood flows, whereas veins have thinner, more elastic, muscular walls. They also have what we call valves in them. Okay, you've learnt about this when we did blood vessels in Og. And they have quite a wide lumen. So the reason they have the valves is blood is travelling at lower pressure, so the valves help to keep the blood flowing in one direction. So underneath your table that hopefully you've just filled in for the significant figures for the blood components, can you draw me this table? So put a heading, blood vessels, arteries and veins carry blood around the body. And then we've got our 2 that we're going to compare, our vein and our artery. We've got the thickness in millimetres, the significant figures, which I'll tell you in the PowerPoint, and I want the thickness then written to those significant figures for me. Pause the video at this point so that you can draw out the table. So, the thickness of a vein wall is 0.368 millimetres. So you think on a ruler where you see 1 centimetre, 1 centimetre is made up of 10 millimetres. And this is not even 1 millimetre. This is 0.368 of a millimetre. I want you to write this measurement to one significant figure. So you write this number in the first column, 1 in the second column for significant figure, and then can you write that number to one significant figure for me, please? And I've just spotted a spelling in there. It should say measurement, E in the middle there. Edit that if we can. Will it allow us to draw on here? Pen. No, it doesn't want us to. Okay. The artery one is 1.109 millimetres, so a little bit wider, a little bit thicker, okay, and this number, I want you to write to 3 significant figures. So, in the first column, we have the thickness, 1.109, the second column, 3 significant figures, and can you write that number to 3 significant figures? So I'm going to go back to my table here, and this is where I really need my pen to be working on here. That's better. So if we remember, the number of platelets present in 1 drop of blood was 28,654, and we need to show this to 3 significant figures. So first, second, third figure, but because this number is a 5 next to the 6, that is going to turn that 6 into a 7. So our 3 significant figures should be 28,700. For our red blood cells, there were 5,176,928. And we want this to one significant figure. There's our one significant figure. That number is not going to turn that into a 6, so it is 5 million. Approximately 5 million. White blood cells, the number present was 15,294. Sorry, it's just draws a line. And I want this to 4 significant figures. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And because that number 4 isn't 5 or larger, then we say this is 15,290. So the reason why we use these significant figures, okay, for numbers is an approximation. Not everybody is going to have an exact number, and we have people of different sizes, okay, different heights, different ages, and so they will have differences in the numbers of these blood components. So we give an approximate number. For our second table, we have our veins and arteries. Our vein, if you remember, was 0.368 millimeters thick, and we wanted you to give it to one significant figure. Now, there's no number to begin with, that's a 0. So we have to ignore that, put 0 point, and we look at the first significant number here. That is a 3, but next to it is a 6. So that 6 would convert that 3 to a 4, so 0.4 millimeters. For our artery, 1.109 millimeters, and we want that given to 3 significant figures, 1, 2, and this one gets converted to a 1.1 millimeters, okay? So if you got those right, well done, superb job. You are understanding how to show figures to significant figures, or show numbers to significant figures. Diane, well done. So going on to the next part of this lesson, we already know the components of our blood, but we don't know what their function is, or we might not remember from the work that we did in the lesson. So 55% of your liquid blood is plasma. It's the yellowy liquid, the pale yellowy liquid. And we'll talk about what the role of each of these is in a second. 45% is actually made up of the cells, the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and platelets are little fragments of cells. So each component has a particular role to do. So as we said, plasma, as we can see here, is a yellowy straw-coloured liquid, and its job is involved in transport. It transports dissolved substances around the body. Some of these substances include things like hormones that are racing around our body constantly, and they are made in glands and they travel to target organs to change something that's happening. So, for example, the sex hormones, okay, and hormones that control other things in our body. Antibodies, which I'm sure you've heard about at the moment in the news with COVID, okay, travel in our blood plasma, and they are very important. Nutrients such as water, glucose, amino acids, minerals, and vitamins all travel dissolved in our body, in our plasma, as well as some waste substances. So carbon dioxide is soluble, it dissolves in the plasma, as well as urea, a waste substance that helps to make up our urine. Red blood cells then are the next structure, and these are kind of dimple-shaped cells. So we can see here our red blood cells are quite pretty. They've got like a little dimple in the middle, top and bottom. And the reason they have this, okay, is to increase their surface area, okay, so that they can carry more oxygen. So that's their job. They carry oxygen from the lungs to the tissue. And the oxygen they transport is very efficient the way it's done because there are huge numbers of them. So as we said earlier, in one drop of blood, okay, there's almost 5 million red blood cells. They're also very tiny to allow them to pass through very narrow capillaries one at a time. So a little bit like when we're walking down the corridors, one person at a time down the corridors. They have a flattened disc shape. Now this disc, if we cut a red blood cell in half, it looks like this shape. And we call that shape a biconcave or dumbbell shaped. And the reason it's called biconcave, bi means two, so top and bottom. Concave means to cave in. And it gives this figure of 8, okay, kind of increased surface area. And it allows rapid diffusion of oxygen into the red blood cell and out. They also contain a lot of this pigment hemoglobin, which is red and has iron in it, which helps to pick up the oxygen. It actually combines with the hemoglobin, the oxygen, to make something called oxyhemoglobin. Quite complicated words, some of these. And then when this oxyhemoglobin gets to a place where it needs to be dropped off, it separates from the hemoglobin to let it go. White blood cells, we can see one here nestled in between the red blood cells, much, much bigger than red blood cells, by the way, okay, and fewer in number, okay. Their job is defense in your body. So they defend the body in a couple of ways. There are some white blood cells that will go around almost like swallowing up bacteria. We say they engulf them. This word, okay, is called phagocytosis, and this is the posh scientific term for what the white blood cell does. It swallows up, engulfs the bacteria and other pathogens, and they can also change their shape easily and make enzymes that digest the pathogens. So we say that white blood cells also make antitoxins. These antitoxins, anti means against and toxin is poisons, help to neutralize poisons from bacteria. So that's why bacteria can make you feel so unwell, because they're making toxins or poisons. And the other thing that the white blood cells do, that word we mentioned earlier, antibodies. These help to destroy potential pathogens and microbes. So that word antibody does not mean against your body. Antibody means against foreign bodies. Foreign bodies are things that have come into your body that should not be there. It could be pollen in hay fever season. It could be dust. It could be microbes that you've inhaled or ingested, okay? Lastly, our platelets. We can see them in action here, okay? And they're actually clotting some blood here. So they're very small fragments of cells, but they do not possess a nucleus, so they are not a whole cell. And they're involved in the process of forming clots at sites where there's a wound. The reason why it's important our blood clots when we cut ourselves or graze ourselves is to prevent further entry of more microbes into the body. So we want to keep those microbes out as well as preventing you from losing blood. So the smallest part in our blood is the platelets. These are the very smallest sections. Next would be our red blood cell. That's the next smallest, followed by the white blood cell, the large. We can't really say plasma has a size because it's a liquid. It's what all the cells float in. So your job, you've got 4 tasks that you're going to do. You're going to draw out a table for me. In this table, it's going to have 4 columns. I want to know what the 4 components of the blood are. So this is task 1. So there will be 4 rows going across here as well as our title. I want to know what is it? Is it a cell? Is it a liquid? Is it a fragment? So that's task 2. I want a description of its function. So what's its job for task 3? And for task 4, I want an explanation of how the structure suits the function. So how does its shape or features help it to do its job for task 4? If you're not sure about any of these answers for task 1, 2, 3 and 4, pause the video, rewind it and go back to the pages where each of the components are described, okay? And pause the video at this point to draw the table out to start filling it in. If you've completed this task, okay, there is an extension. So there's the table for you to fill in. And I've got some information here about certain blood disorders. So this one is called sickle cell anemia. So I want you to read the information that is on the slide, and I want you to explain what sickle cell anemia is, use diagrams, explain why the sickle cell can lead to organ damage, and why is sickle cell more prominent in African people, okay? So there's a couple of questions there for extension task on sickle cell anemia. So pause the video, use that information to help you answer that. And to finish off, some blood fun facts. The average human has 5 litres of blood, about 9 pints. It takes about 20 seconds for a red blood cell to actually make a complete circuit of the body, and you should remember that from your red blood cell recount stories that I can't wait to read when I take your booklets in. The only part of the body with no blood supply is the cornea. It takes in oxygen directly from the air. 1 cubic millimetre of healthy blood contains about 5 million red blood cells. This is your blood count. People who live in high altitudes will have a higher blood count because they have lower oxygen levels at high altitude. Athletes will often train, therefore, at high altitudes to improve distance race performance. And blood doping is done by some athletes, and it mimics this effect of training at high altitude. Okay, we're going to finish the lesson there. Thank you.